Okay, so moving on, we are looking in this video at what we call shares and dividends. So basically the short story of this is basically a share, or otherwise known as a stock, is basically just part ownership in a company. So these are bought and sold on the stock market or stock exchange in various different countries. Now, with shares, they typically come with a share price or some kind of market value, which changes basically every day and even minute by minute. So the types of questions you're going to encounter, first type are going to be with calculating the cost of shares if you want to purchase a certain amount of shares at a certain price. So let's say someone wanted to buy 500 shares at a market value of $6.80 each. And typically, when you buy stocks, there is what they call a brokerage fee that gets incurred. So a fee that one of these companies, for example, in Australia we have ComSec or some other types of what we call brokers, they charge a fee for when you buy certain stocks. So let's say in this case, a brokerage fee of $33 was charged. And we want to find out the cost that this would be. So we have we're getting 500 shares. We're underlining all the key bits of information, and they are $6.80 each. And this brokerage fee of $33, you have to pay that whether you buy one stock or 500 stocks or shares. So let's actually lay out what this is asking from us. So there are $6.50 for every one share. So we can find the cost of 500 shares by taking my $6.80, which is for one share, multiplying it by 500. Because for every one share, it's going to cost $6.80. To find the cost of 500, we can multiply it. So this, let's underline it here. This part is our cost of total shares. But in addition to that, we have to pay the brokerage fee. So we're going to add to that, because it's just $33 more on top of this thing here. So we have our cost of our total shares, and this here is our brokerage fee. And basically, all we have to do now is add all of that together. So we're going to multiply this through and add it, and that's going to give us a total cost of shares with brokerage included of $3,433. Now, just a really quick side note on this, what we basically have here is really just because we talked about them in about 2 videos ago, a linear relationship. Think about it. Our cost, let's say we have a cost of C, is going to be the price, which is $6.80, for each one share. So let's call that S, for example. So $6.80 times S, times the total number of shares, plus, let's call it B for a brokerage fee. Is this any different to Y equals MX plus B? We're looking at basically the same thing. The $6.80 here is like the gradient. That's the price for each share. That's how much money it's going to go up by for each share, plus an initial, I guess, intercept or an initial brokerage fee of B. So this kind of lines up even how I've written it. The cost is $6.80 times 500 plus 33. Just as a little side note, we can think about this as a linear relationship as well. Okay, so that's shares and calculating the cost of shares. The next part, we're going to talk about what we call dividends. Now, a dividend since you are a part owner of a company when you buy into the stock market, you are entitled to a share of the company's profits. So profits are given to these shareholders as a dividend. And the way we calculate a dividend is we have to look at something called the dividend yield. So these dividends, they're payments given as an amount per share or a percentage of the issued price. So our dividend yield here formula you'll be given in your textbooks is we have this dividend yield, this percentage, as an annual dividend, so the annual amount you get paid out over the total market price. So you're going to get some percentage of these profits as a fraction of the total market price. Now, you can do this and you can find this as a decimal, or we can, if I shift this over, take this thing and times it by 100% to convert it into a percentage. You can leave that in there or you don't need to. So let's look at an example here. So let's say a company has a share price, so their market value is $28.42. Okay, now for this first part, let's say the predicted dividend yield is 3.5%. And we want to find what the actual dividend is that you will get paid. So this is what you're going to get at the end of the day. So since we have a formula here of, let's write it out again, dividend yield equals to the annual dividend over the market price. We'll save the 100% for a little bit later. We can rearrange this equation to find the dividend. What we're actually looking for here is this part up here. So we've been given that a predicted dividend yield is 3.5%. So I'm going to write that in place of this dy here. So 3.5% or 0.035 as a decimal equals to your, let's call this AD for annual dividend, over the market price we've been given, which is $28.42. We can find our annual dividend by just rearranging this equation and making it the subject. So it becomes a simple one-step equation. To get this 28.42 away, we can multiply it over on both sides. And that means that our annual dividend, the thing we get every year, given this market, the share price doesn't change. Obviously, there's a lot of movement when it comes to the stock market and these prices. That's going to give us 0.035 times this $28.42, which gives us 0.99 or 99 cents. Okay, now let's say the company in part B decides to pay a dividend of $1.12. So company pays a dividend of $1.12. And we want to find the dividend yield. Well, now we can just basically put it in the formula we came up with. So our dividend yield, we get that by taking the annual dividend and dividing it by the market price. So here the annual dividend, let's say the company decides they want to give $1.12, and we divide that by the share price. So Once we do this, it's going to give us a decimal, but dividend yields are typically given as percentages, so we can just multiply this by 100% in order to give us a percentage. So once we do this, we're going to get 3.94%. This is our dividend yield.